the main event, and that is going to be 1954's Them. Know what other movie came out in 1954? The original Gojira. So, two of the classic, like, cautionary tales of nuclear weapons.
Same year.
Same year, but two very, very different movies. While they do have a lot of similarities, very, very different. This is the second time I've watched this movie, and I love it even more because it's just like, I love those, in high school we used to read like short stories, and they were usually Twilight Zone episodes that were like, were originally short stories.
Yeah.
And this just gave me like Twilight Zone vibes, this whole movie.
This is my first time watching it, and I was like, I knew it was always a very highly regarded movie, monster movie, creature feature, if you want to call it, but I was pretty blown away. And some of the there's a couple of really nice shots in this movie, but one of the ones that I thought was really cool was it was in the opening scene. The opening scene, it opens up with two cops driving through the desert, super high speed. It's like you think they're chasing something, and then there's also an airplane up in the sky, kind of radioing back and forth with them. They're looking for something, and the airplane spots this little girl wandering the desert. So they pull over, they get the girl. But one of the shots in this scene, which I thought was really cool, is they do like a pan of the car and like the whole area, the girl walking, the police car. But you actually see the airplane fly by down low in the background. I don't know if it was a special effects thing or if that airplane was really there.
Oh, I think it was there.
It was I don't know how you could repeat that shot or time it that way, but it would have, if that airplane was really there, and I think it was, I felt like that pan shot and having that airplane timed perfectly probably was like next to impossible to do, but it was a really awesome shot. And then there's another shot later on in the movie where they're announcing everything going on, but I'll talk about that one later.
Yeah, like, do you think they're gonna be able like to mimic the cinematography in this like remake that they're coming out with? I feel like the story even. Like, they don't do stories like this anymore.
They don't. Like this, like, I don't know that this story will work modern day. I don't know. They're going to have to change it. So they announced back January 4th earlier this year, Michael Giacchino, he's a famous composer. He's done a bunch of movies and tons of everything. He's a famous composer, done a lot of scores for movies. He's going to do his directorial debut is going to be a remake of this movie for Warner Brothers. No time frame on what's coming out. It was just announced, so it's definitely in like super early production phase. If I had to guess, we're going to say 2025 to 2026. Who knows? It might get scrapped even, but hopefully it doesn't. I really don't know how you could pull off a movie like. I feel like if you remake this, like, do you make it set in the 50s again?
I feel. How do you do this in 2020? Like, it wouldn't even make any sense.
Like, I mean, clearly they're doing Godzilla, and he's the result of a bomb. But like, so the premise of them was, we know, is giant ants, and these giant ants came to be because way back in 1945, they were doing these nuclear tests in Nevada, right? It's Nevada where it takes place. And these ants were in the desert when they were doing these tests. And then 9 years later, after being exposed to all this radiation, these ants become giant monsters. And we get this swarm of giant ants. But you think about how can you do that type of story? There's no nuclear weapons to test. Yeah. I mean, we have the nuclear weapons. Like back then, it was like something new.
Ooh, scary taboo. You can make a movie like
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
And then like even like the way they set it up is like it's like okay, first off, they find the girl, she's in shock. You know something bad happened because she's walking with this doll with like half its head missing.
Yes.
And she's just walking. She doesn't talk.
Silent, doesn't respond to them. So
They get in the car, they find this trailer with a car attached to it. They're like, oh, let's just go talk to who's in the trailer. Other side of the trailer, it's completely blown out the back. And they're like, oh my God. And, you know, they're looking around. There's money's not taken. There's no bodies anywhere.
There's a little blood. They find the broken piece of the doll's head in there. They find
underneath the bed, like they stuffed her in the cupboard or something.
Yeah. And then they find like a unloaded gun there. And then they find this weird footprint out in the sand, and they're like, oh, what's this about? And then while they're there, the forensics team's there. They're checking it. They're like, I've never seen a footprint like this. I don't know what kind of animal this is. Maybe it was some sort of animal attack. We don't know. And then you hear this chirping, like this sandstorm starts to happen, and you hear this weird chirping. It's a mixture of bird chirps and tree frog sounds that they use to make this sound. And then nothing happens.
Yeah.
But then something gets reported about some sort of disturbance at a local shop. So our main character, Ben Peterson, goes with his partner to check out the shop during the sandstorm to see what's going on. They get there, the shop's empty. It looks like it's been ransacked. They find a shotgun behind the counter that's bent and like broken.
Yeah.
And then they open like the cellar hatch and they see the shop guy dead on the floor there. And then they notice like these things of sugar are like knocked over.
Yeah, well, there's also sugar cubes strewn about the campsite.
Yes.
So I think what they were heavily implying was like that these ants somehow like rapidly grew once they got to the sugar.
Yeah.
Because they kept saying like something broke out of the shop. Something broke out of the RV.
Yeah. Like, like these
like something didn't go
huge.
into it. It like came out of it.
Yes. Yeah, the growth of them is not seen on screen.
No.
But when they finally make their debut, they're big, they're there. So they call in the shopkeeper's murder, and Ben Peterson, the sergeant, he's like, I'm gonna go back to the station, get some backup. He leaves his partner there. He's like, you hang on here, keep an eye out in case anything weird goes on. Then we hear the chirping sound again. So the partner goes outside with his gun, and then we just hear screams, gunfire, and then it cuts to Ben in the police station, all bent out of shape and feeling guilty that he left his partner there to ultimately die. And they're like, oh, what happened to him?
Yeah. And the body's missing.
And the body's missing, yeah.
Like they don't know where he is or what
they're
happened.
assuming he's dead because the other dude in the shop is dead. The RV's empty. There was gun shells at the scene.
And during this conversation, it's also noted that the father of the child and also, you know, obviously the owner of the RV was an FBI agent who's apparently like a master marksman.
Yes.
So they were like, if he unloaded his gun, you know he didn't miss.
Yeah.
So they're like, what happened?
So
there's no bodies, no blood.
Yeah. So with the FBI being involved, they then call in our next main character, played by James Arness, FBI agent Robert Graham. So it takes off. He becomes Ben's like new partner, or they both become partners with each other.
Yeah.
Throughout the rest of this movie with this investigation. The mysterious footprint, they say, oh, we got some specialists called in and they're flying in to help us out. And they also get the report back from the coroner who said that the body of the shopkeeper was filled with enough acid to kill 20 men. And they're like, what's that about? And they're like, he had all these other things that could have led to his death.
Broken ribs, broken spine, like a bunch of things.
But the acid was the big standout. And they're like, what the heck is that about? So these specialist doctors arrived, Dr. Howard Medford and then his daughter, Pat Medford. They arrive on the scene, and he clearly already has a theory based on the picture of the footprint and everything. But they're like, I don't know, let's see. So they kind of being around the bush, and the Ben and Rob are kind of getting annoyed with them. They're like, if you have an idea what's going on, tell us. And he's like, well, I don't want to be wrong, so I'm not going to tell you until I know. So he has them kind of take him around. Um, and they go to the first site where they found the little girl. And, well, actually, no, before that,
They go to the
so
hospital.
before that, they go to the hospital to visit the girl first. And the doctor, Harold Medford, he pulls out like a vial
It's the
acid,
acid.
acid, and he gives it. He kind of puts it under the girl's nose, and she just freaks out and starts yelling them. So he's like, "All right, I got an idea." So they go back to the trailer, and they start looking around. They're finding more footprints. Pat's following the footprints, taking pictures. There's a sandstorm about to go on, and they both have their goggles on, and she trips, and then over the hill rises our first giant ant, and they're like, all right,
Yeah, and you hear
this
the
is,
noises coming.
yeah,
She screams,
yeah.
and Ben just goes over there and just starts unloading. And the doctor's like, "Oh, there it is."
Shoot it, yeah, yeah. He's like, shoot it into an antenna. So they shoot the antennas out, and then they unload a Tommy gun on it. He just had it in the trunk. Um, so the doctor's like, oh, I was right. I knew it was going to be ants. And they go back to the base. They're like, what are we going to do? They're like, well, we got to find the nest because if there's a nest, there could be hundreds. And they're like, we got to get this going right away because it could spread across the country and the world could be ended by ants. He's like, these ants are resilient. He's like, they could lift up something 10 times their body weight or more.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, some crazy number.
Some crazy number. It's
Yeah,
even more than that.
We've all seen ant documentaries. You know that they're
Yeah.
like absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And he's like, these ants, they wage war and they can take
Yes.
over the whole thing. It's
Yes.
very important to that. And what I liked about, they developed this plan on how to get rid of the ants that are in the desert. And it's very like scientific based. Like they completely thought this through. I feel like if this was a more modern movie, they would have just done what the military guy said and just bombed it and just called it a day.
Yeah.
But no, they're like, no. We have to make sure that all the ants are in there. We can't let one single ant be loose. So we're going to wait for the height of the day because we noticed the pattern that they don't like the desert heat. So they wait for height of the day. And then it's like, okay, well, how do we make sure that it's hot and that they stay inside? Well, let's just burn a bunch of potassium right on top.
Yeah.
Or
So
thermite or whatever it was.
yeah, they like pour it all around and then they shoot it all with rocket launchers, start this like huge fire.
Which is absolutely awesome because it's like they don't need to use rocket launchers. But even they're like, oh, I never got to shoot a rocket launcher before.
Yeah. And one of the things they said is that, like, for some reason during that scene, even though they weren't in the military, Ben and the FBI agent Rob are wearing military uniforms for some reason. They're like, oh, it's a military operation, so we might as well dress accordingly. We get to shoot rocket launchers if we wear this.
Ben's like, oh, he has a general with him that's like running this operation, and he's like, I never got to give orders to a general before.
Yeah, because basically it's their job to tap the general and the soldiers on the shoulder to shoot the rocket launcher once it's loaded. So they fire this thing off, and then the next plan is to what did they put? What they were going to put cyanide
gas inside,
into the thing.
smother out the whole colony.
Yeah, so they fire it in there, and when they start doing it, a couple ants come to the bottom of the ant hill or nest and look up, but then they quickly retreat back in and they start gassing them. They gas them. And then they were like, all right, time to see if we got them all. So they go into the nest. Ben and Robert, the cop, and
Dr. Pat Medford.
yes, and then the doctor's daughter goes with them because she's like, "Oh, I'm the only one that knows how to identify the proper things." And they go through. They find a section where it caves in. They have flamethrowers. There was a section caved in during the explosions, so a small group of ants survived, but they quickly deal with them with their flamethrowers. They burn them up. And interesting thing about the flamethrowers is they were real World War II flamethrowers, and they had actual soldiers in the suits using these flamethrowers. And you notice a lot of scenes that they almost shoot the flames towards the camera because this movie was possibly going to be 3D, but they ended up scrapping it. But they still kept the shots in. We're like, all right, we're going to shoot some fire towards the camera. And you could see a couple shots where you're like, all right, I could see that being 3D. So they use these real flamethrowers, and they burn up the nest. But the problem was they took some pictures. Pat took pictures, and unfortunately, when they bring the pictures up, the doctor's like, they hatched, more queens hatched. They're like, there's at least, what was it, 3 queens, 2 queens?
Two queens hatched.
Yeah, no,
two queens and then 2 males with winged males.
Yes.
So the whole point of the winged male is that they fly away with these new queens, they mate, and then after they mate, the males die, and females can lay eggs for up to 15 to 20 years afterwards.
Yeah. So they're like, shit, the mission failed. Like, we gotta either find these nests, we gotta warn Washington, and they're still keeping this hush hush. This whole operation's been going on, and they're still like, we don't want to create mass panic. So Washington begins kind of monitoring all kind of strange reports of missing persons, murders, UFOs.
Yeah.
And one of them gets a report of a crop duster. Is that, yeah. Yeah, the crop duster comes first.
Yeah, the crop duster that saw 3 UFOs that look like ants.
Yeah. So they go visit him in the hospital, and he retells the story. He's like, it was a UFO, but he's like, it looked like 3 ants, like giant insects. And he's like, they think I'm crazy. They have me in this mental ward. He's like, can you help me out? He's like, you guys don't believe me, do you? And they're like, no, we believe you. And they're like, we'll see what we could do. And then, like, they leave. They're like, all right, so we got a general idea of where these ants are. And one of the doctors approaches them, and they're like, what do you think of him? And they're like, oh, he's crazy. Like, so they don't tell they're like, we'll call you when you can let him out, though.
Well, they, like, threatened him, though. They were like, that, you know, they were like, it's very important that he stays here.
Yeah.
We'll let you know when he's feeling better.
Yeah. So they're trying extremely hard to cover this up. Yeah. So they go back. They're like, all right, we got a general idea of where they are. Shortly after, they get a report of a ship at sea that was attacked. It was a cargo ship. And there must have been one of the queens got on board this ship.
Yeah.
And
started laying eggs in the ship.
Yep, the whole crew got killed, but luckily the military was able to take the ship out, but there was no survivors. And then the next event that happens is a train with 40,000 pounds of sugar gets attacked, and the sugar gets stolen. And they go to interview the train yard guy, and he's like, yeah, they think I stole the sugar. And he's like, what am I going to... He's like, there's not really a black market for 40,000 pounds of sugar.
Yeah, he's like, why would I do this?
He's like, yeah. Yeah, so now... And that brings them to L.A., which is where our final showdown ends up being. And all the reporters are starting to get antsy. They're like, why is this military government operation going on here in the city? What's going on? What are they keeping from us? And next thing that happens after this is 2 boys go missing, and along with did they find the husband's body?
I think they might have found the husband's body.
Yeah, they found the husband's body, but these 2 boys were missing. And they were with them apparently, and they're trying to find these boys now. So they're going all over. They're asking people, interviewing people that were out at night. They interview a woman that apparently was out cheating with somebody.
No, the gentleman was sick, and she was just making sure that he was feeling better. But you know, he's married, and he just don't want the wife to get angry about it. She wouldn't understand.
Yeah. There's that. They interview all these people, and none of them have any information. None of them saw anything weird. And then, like, oh, why don't we go to the
Drunk ward at the
drunk
hospital.
ward? Yeah, and see if
Because
anybody
there's one other
there.
guy that got arrested.
Yeah.
And
So
he's like, yeah, I see, I've seen ants all the time.
he was like, I seen him down at the river, and they're like, what river? There's no river here. And it's the what are those
The
called?
LA River, those
Yeah, the LA
the,
River,
like
but
irrigation system.
it's not really a river
Yeah,
anymore. So yeah, I've seen that. And an interesting thing about this is I didn't realize this when you're watching the movie, it goes by quick. But one of the things I was reading online is that he said he's been seeing this a while. So in this scene, it's kind of implied that from the opening scene to now, it's been 5 months that this has been
yeah, no,
going
it's
on, and the
been
government's been
it's been
keeping
a
this
good
covered
amount of
up.
time.
Yeah, and you don't really get that while you're watching the movie because everything's just kind of keeps moving and moving and moving, and it's like it makes it seem like almost like, oh, we're going here, we're going here, we're going here, and they're jumping city to city all over the world chasing these ants. But some time has passed. They've been chasing these things a while. Um, so when they finally realize that this nest is happening, they go live. They tell the country that, listen, we're about to carry out an operation to take out this nest. They let everybody know. There's a really cool scene when they're listening to a radio in like a diner, and it kind of like zooms in to the window where the people are at the table, then looks out the window, and you see all the military activity going out the window. That was one of my other favorite shots of the movie.
Yeah,
Um, and then they pretty much figure out that these boys were playing down by the river and that the father would take them there, and they had a toy plane, and they kind of link it all together. All right, this is where they got taken. So they go into all the sewage systems.
yeah.
Now the whole military is going down there looking for these kids, and they find the nest and they find the kids, and Sergeant Ben Peterson is the first one to find them. He heads in, radios to send back up here. He helps the kids escape, but as he's lifting them up out of the drain pipe, he gets bit by the ants with one of their mandibles, and he eventually dies from the injuries as Rob and the rest of the military show up just a second too late to take out the ant that was attacking him.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's pretty
I
crazy.
really,
I mean, it's towards the end of the movie, but they killed off like the main character
yeah,
for the most
yeah.
part.
Yeah, I mean, I look at him as like the main character for the movie, honestly, myself too. And I was kind of surprised that they killed him. I was like, oh, he's saving these kids. Like, he's like a good guy the whole movie, and they killed off the good guy.
Yeah, no, pretty surprising. So
Yeah,
then, kind of like Rob takes over as like the only main character, like the main character now. He's the male
for the
lead,
reindeer.
which is only
Yeah,
like 5 minutes,
yeah.
but still, it's like pretty surprising
Yeah,
that they did that.
no, it is, and it goes. The ending then carries out the military is just torching them. They're like, "Did we get the queen before she laid her princess eggs?"
Yeah,
And
no, well, the doctor comes in, he's like looks over everything, and he's like, "Okay, you're good to go, boys," and they just light up like the
yeah,
remainder of the
the
nest.
three of them are still there at the bottom of the nest. The new princesses that just hatched, and he's like, torch them, and we're good to go. He's like, this situation's over, and that's kind of how it ends. It ends with them torching down the three princesses, and then the doctor kind of does like a little monologue saying that we don't know what the results of the other atomic bombs were after they dropped, and if the ants were a result of testing bombs or not. So it almost kind of like leaves it open for like a sequel, for there to be like another movie or some
Well,
other
I think
creature. But
I think this is like that old fashioned 50s sci-fi, like, ooh, leave him a little scared, like, ooh, this could be real
yeah,
type of thing. Like they don't do
yeah,
stuff like that anymore.
no,
You
but
know, it's just like, oh, just leave him with a little, ooh,
yeah, we don't know the effects of bombing. But I mean, before this, there was the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. 2 is sort of a result, somewhat, of atomic testing as well. It's just released from an atomic testing, similar to Godzilla. But Really good movie. I really enjoyed it. Um, I did not expect it to be this good, honestly. I
No,
mean,
no, it's a good one.
I know it's always highly praised, but I I really didn't expect it to be as good as it was. It was really good. It was like a crime murder mystery. It starts off as, and then it spirals into a monster creature feature, if you will. And there's still like some mystery throughout the whole movie, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Really well done. Like I said, I
and
really
yeah,
do not know how they could do this modern day,
yeah,
though.
and I really like the super scientific approach that was taken with like each scene to make it seem like somewhat plausible.
And they did say that this is, I believe, this is the first movie with the scientific figure doing the slideshow explaining the bad creature and what they're dealing with
Yeah,
scene. And I mean, we've seen it in a ton of practically almost all the Godzilla movies and so many different monster movies. They've done that scene now, and
yeah,
this was the first one to do it, which is
yeah,
a pretty cool little tidbit there.
yeah. So definitely one of the classics. Interested to see the remake to see what they do with it, how they do it. Like some movies, I'm just like, what's the point? Like it's
Yeah,
already perfect.
yeah. It's like to me, that's like
Like
Jaws.
you
Like
can
how do you?
clown on the way the ants look a little bit, but like even like the details that they had, like their heads like bulging and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Like they did the best that they
it,
possibly could at the
yeah.
time.
And the movie did face a budget cut literally days before they began production because this movie was supposed to be shot in color, and the only sequence with a little color is the opening title. It's all black and white, and the words "them" come up on the screen in red, and that's the only color you see the whole movie. Um, they had to cut the budget, so they had to shoot it in black and white.
But like I wonder if this almost looks better because it's in black and white. Like how well would the ants have aged if this was in color?
That's a really good point. That's an absolutely excellent point. It probably is one of those movies that does look better in black and white, honestly.
Yeah, I
I
mean, and it adds. I feel like it adds to the creepiness. It adds to that like '50s sci-fi. Like
Yes.
I feel like it just like was like the perfect thing to happen.
It gives me like, like it reminds me of like the birds and like everything and American Psycho, kind of like the vibe of that, like because it starts off like a murder mystery,
Yeah,
some good cinematic shots and everything.
yeah, no, definitely.
It was a really well done movie, and it is one of the it was one, I think, their best movie of the year for Warner Brothers at the time. I'm I just I'm really excited for a remake, but I'm also really scared for a remake. Like I feel like this is like a good like you could only do it in this period if you keep this story. Like what would they do nowadays? Like, would they do like some sort of global warming's causing it, or some sort of ecological thing?
I don't know.
Some other
Genetic
type of
testing,
yeah, it's like genetic testing, some other type of weird weapon
lab
tests.
experiment escape.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's really hard,
Yeah,
but with him being a composer, you would it would be kind of interesting if he did go back to the 50s style just to do kind of like a 50 kind style kind of score. Like we have like a lot of these like what they're calling, what do you like, period pieces, like Stranger Things. Like one of the awesome things about that series is it takes place in the 80s and it's got an awesome soundtrack where you could almost, if it wasn't for the special effects, you would almost believe that like this movie came out, like that show came out in the 80s just because of the music. It's just scored so well.
yeah,
Um, so that could be one of his things. Is he's like, oh, I want to do a 50s style kind of score, and how can I do that? Remake a 50s movie. I don't know if
yeah.
he's scoring the movie, but I mean, him being a composer, going from the music side to directing side, you would think music would be a very heavy element for him.
Definitely. Well, we're gonna have to see. Honestly, I think there's some potential there, but it just depends on what they want to do with it.
I think it would be a really different movie to see a 50s style monster movie shot in modern day as still a 50s monster movie.
Yeah, but they have to take it serious though. It can't be like a joke.
Yeah. No. Yeah. We can't have like a 8-legged freak style or evolution. I'm really curious about this remake, but I mean the original is just absolutely excellent and definitely one of my favorite movies that I've seen recently.
Yeah. So I guess that about wraps it up. We just want to say thank you guys for watching 1 year, and here's to another year.
Yeah, here's to another year. Thanks for watching, guys, and keep an eye out for more of our videos.
All right, bye.